So as you can see, there is a close relationship of the color bands on the z-axis, all right? And I can actually control where these colors reside on the fractal in a couple different ways. One way is to move the color bar. I can move it around. All right, and I can also modify the color variation on Z control. Typically what I like to do, as I had explained in the last session, you see that little indicator right there? I like to get this indicator right on top there, which would give me something very close to kind of an even distribution of the color variations along the z-axis, and then I turn my attention to the diffuse color adjustment. All right, now continuing our discussion of this is a very powerful tool here. All right, I'm leaving all of these colors very garish so that you can very clearly see how the colors are impacting my scene. And we can very clearly see that there are color variations along the z-axis. So let's do a couple other things here. Now, if I leave this glue sliders checked on, then if I move a slider, they all sort of maintain their ratio to one another. I'll just kind of show you the difference. If I uncheck glue sliders, then each of these sliders will move independently of all of the others, depending upon what I choose to do. All right. So with the glue sliders unchecked, I can take my red and I can move it, and I can span across here. All right. Ugh, look at that. I mean, basically, I have moved it so far off in the background. If we think yellow is the furthest we go, I've got my red so far off there, we can't even see it. It's in there somewhere. But I'm going to do this. I'm going to put that back now. Just, watch that. See? So now my red is much more prominent because it's closer to the camera. So I can actually modify or change the position of the color band on the z-axis of the Mandelbulb by modifying the position of each of these control bars with the glue sliders off. If I put the glue sliders back on, and now I modify if the others, the relationship, the ratio of the separation ratio of these other bars try to maintain a separation. I mean, I can get to a point where I just overlap them like that. If you're looking at right here, didn't really impact I'm getting some red right down in here. My yellow is still very prominent because that's the first bar. And keep in mind, it's all pretty much based upon the position of this slider. So let's pull that back out. Let's not get too crazy here. All right. Now I've got other bars that are hidden down in here. I could take and pull these out too. All right, that's the end of my bars. The glue sliders is checked on. Okay. All right. So let's analyze this a bit. I mean, this is a really bad image. I've got my yellow and way off in the background. Now I've got some turquoise here. Now I get into red. There's my red in there. Now here's some blue. Now here's black. I'm getting actually closer to the camera now. Black. Here's another black, two blacks. All right, and we got some green. Well, the green is just completely overwhelmed. We can't even see green in there. But this gives you an idea of how the colors are distributed across the z-axis. Now, with this weird concoction here, all right, I'm going to adjust this color variation on Z, and let's see what we get. You see? Look at that, huh? Isn't that crazy? Oh, let's say I don't want black anymore. I don't know, what's good? Pick orange. Okay. Get back down here on my color variant on Z. All right, I think this has probably demonstrated what can be very powerful coloring capabilities of your Mandelbulb 3D object or scene. And I've left all these colors crazy garish so that you can see the principle of the color along the z-axis. All right. Now, there's a couple other coloring capabilities here that we'll take a quick look at it. You have a control right here. It's called color start and color end. You actually have the ability to define where this color band begins and where it ends. All right, now I'm just going to tweak this so you can see what's going on. Now, what I have done is I've made it so that with this lower color end slider, I've made it so that the color ends ends somewhere out here. There's my green, There's okay. And now there's a relationship here. This is where my color starts. And you can kind of see the color moving along the z-axis as I do this. So this is a very interesting control. Not normally something that you want to get involved with until you have your color scale, all right? Otherwise, you tweak this in and you go change this your color band, and now this doesn't make any sense anymore. You can kind of neutralize this control by clicking on adjust sliders to fit the histogram endpoints. Boom. Now, uh, buried deep down in here, and you'd never know it was there until you either read up on it or you eventually figured it out. There's a little histogram in there. Now, a histogram is something that we use in photography all the time. As a matter of fact, it's used any time that there's any type of visual system where pixels are involved, intensities. The histogram shows the distribution of the light intensity or the photon intensity or pixel intensity across the scene. So in a histogram, if you had you have a histogram chart, and on the right side of this chart, it's going to show you the amount of intensity on the, let's see, that would be on the highlights. No, that would be on the dark side, the shadow side. On the other side of the chart, you're going to have the amount of intensity of the highlights. So a histogram is showing you the light intensity distribution across your image. This little histogram down here is like virtually impossible to read, but it is actually showing us what the light intensity distribution of this scene is, you gotta take out of your mind, you gotta take the coloring out, and you gotta think of intensity. Again, this is why we do lighting first and coloring second, because this little histogram down here is actually showing me or giving me a tip as to where my higher intensity of light is in the scene. So if I click on this adjust sliders to fit the histogram endpoints, boom, like that, I'm actually forcing all my colors to stay within the range of my highlights to shadows. If I do something like that, all right, I'm forcing colors to exist in a manner which is in conflict with the light intensity across the scene. All right, so neutralize, and then right here, adjust roughly, then click for fine adjustment. All right, so what that did is it gave me a little bit better perspective of my histogram, light intensity, dark intensity, and now I can actually have a little bit better control. This particular control here is actually quite important for fine-tuning the relationship of the light intensity to the coloring, or maybe I can say that in reverse, to adjust the coloring to the light intensity across your scene. All right, we're out of time with this session. Let's end here, and we'll pick it up again in the next session. We'll continue to talk about this coloring adjustments a little bit more. I'll see you in the next session.